partner with Pretty Slim Mumbai branch. She is author of the book Management of Diabetes, a complete practical guide, and she is a course director at Quest Healthcare Services Mumbai branch. So the floor is yours, Dr. Anuradha Kapoor, and her topic is glycemic variability, evidence and management. Your time starts now, Dr. Kapoor.
Thanks everyone for giving me such a great opportunity. So I will, without delay, I will start. Glycemic variability, which refers to fluctuations in blood glucose level that occur throughout the day, including hypoglycemic periods and postprandial increases, also known as within day or intraday variability, as well as blood glucose fluctuations that occur at the same time on different days, also known as interday variability. The broad definition of GV considers the intraday glycemic excursions, including episodes of hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. In recent years, GV has become increasingly clinically relevant because of better understanding of the need to reach the target A1C while avoiding hypoglycemia. Diabetes treatment targeting multiple pathophysiological mechanisms are most beneficial in controlling A1C and reducing glycemic variability. So a certain degree of variability is also observed in subjects with normal glucose tolerance, and variability plays a fundamental role in all of the primary control system in our body. Changes in glycemia are the physiological consequences of the normal circadian rhythm of the hormone involved in the glucose metabolism and carbohydrate intake. However, GVs increase in people with diabetes and people with impaired glucose regulation because of GV. Patient compliance decreases, hence GV is hindrance to optimal glucose control. Frequent fluctuations in blood glucose with hypoglycemia and glycemic excursions affects individuals' mood and associated with mood changes, depression, anxiety, and poor quality of life. Various studies have demonstrated that GV is associated with microvascular and macrovascular complications. Therefore, it is crucial not only to identify the boundary beyond which GV takes on a pathological meaning, but also, more importantly, to better define the concept of GV. So to monitor glycemic control and set a glycemic target to achieve optimal glycemic control, GV as a fourth parameter has been proposed to form a glycemic hexad, which needs to be considered in diabetes management. GV as a treatment target has been a topic of debate as well as not practical because of lack of cutoff point currently available for GV. So Monnier and Collett proposed that a Mies value of 40 milligram per DL as the target level of GV and found that GV was an independent predictor of chronic diabetic complication in addition to HbA1c. So in recent years, GV have been proposed to be an additional risk factor for complications of diabetes, independent of hyperglycemia. Growing evidence indicate that significant GV, particularly when accompanied by hypoglycemia, can have a harmful effect not only on onset and progression of diabetes complication, but also in clinical conditions other than diabetes treated in intensive care units. So GV was found to be mainly associated with microvascular complications. The finding from studies on type 2 diabetes support that increased level of short-term GV may play a substantial role in the development of microvascular complications. For example, DCCC trial, they showed increased HbA1c explained only in 11% in the risk of associated with the risk of retinopathy, meaning that factors independent of HbA1c must presumably explain the remaining 89%. And Su et al. Also demonstrated association of GV with diabetes retinopathy in patient with type 1 diabetes mellitus and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Lin et al. Also demonstrated association between urinary albumin excretion and glycemic variability, and very less clear evidence exists to demonstrate the relationship between GV and cardiovascular events and overall mortality. Three studies showed following association. Several years ago, Maggio et al. Showed that all-cause mortality and cardiovascular mortality in elderly patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus was primarily associated with the variability of fasting blood glucose levels. Stop NIDDM study, they supported the concept of an increase in the postprandial glycemia may have a particular harmful effect on the onset of cardiovascular complications, but hard 2D trial did not support this concept, and which has led to a heated debate. But since 1997, more than 15 observational studies and several meta-analyses have been published showing that elevated postprandial hyperglycemia, even in the high non-diabetic IGT range, contribute to an approximately threefold increase in the risk of developing coronary heart disease or CV events. So additional studies are warranted for confirming or refuting the role of GV as a marker of CV complications. There is a significant association between GV and the increased incidence of hypoglycemia and hence CV complications. Strict glycemic control increases the risk of hypoglycemia, and severe hypoglycemia is strongly associated with the increased risk of a range of adverse clinical outcome, including cardiovascular events in patients with diabetes, as shown in DTC trial. And several studies, for example, Kim et al., Su et al., they have all reported that low GV is associated with decreased occurrence of hypoglycemia. Study by Kilpatrick et al. Using database of DCCT showed that HbA1c a poor predictor of hypoglycemic episodes because it only considers 8% of the likelihood of severe hypoglycemia. On the contrary, GV can account for an estimated 40 to 50% of future hypoglycemic episodes. So in summary, the accumulated data that GV seems to be associated with the development of microvascular complications appears to be impressive. However, postprandial spike in blood glucose as well as hypoglycemic events both are blamed for increased cardiovascular events in type 2 diabetes. GV includes both these events, and hence minimizing GV can prevent future cardiovascular events. Nevertheless, we should still include the GV in the list of potential risk factor for diabetes complication. However, defining GV remains a challenge, primarily due to the difficulty of measuring it and the lack of consensus regarding the optimal approach for its management. So several pathophysiological mechanisms were reported by which GV causes vascular complication, all unified into the two primary mechanisms: excessive protein glycation end product and activation of oxidative stress, and measurement of glycemic variability. With increasing interest in the clinical importance of GV in type 2 diabetes, there are a growing number of publications describing the metrics for assessing GV. This wealth of information is often confusing for both physician and patient, with physician being faced with as many as 20 different metrics for assessing GV. Currently, a clear consensus on the gold standard method for measuring GV in clinical practice and research is lacking. That poses a challenge for those who want to compare studies or use this information in clinical practice. Until a gold standard metric for GVs is established, the variety of measurements available may confound the choice of an optimal treatment for an individual patient. Different methods are currently used to assess GV are listed in this table. So here we will discuss the most popular methods used in the clinical practice. So glucose fluctuations or glycemic variability are a process in time, and that has two dimensions: amplitude and time. So projecting along its amplitude axis, the traditional approach to measuring GV consists of assessing the amplitude of glycemic excursions, which relies on self-monitoring blood glucose data or on CGM. Some of the key metrics of GV amplitude are listed here. They are mean, standard deviation, and coefficient of variance. And projected along the time axis, this process is assessed by temporal characteristics such as time within range and time is spent in hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia. So amplitude of GB metrics regarding May's amplitude of glycemic excursions was the first to be developed, primarily to capture mealtime related glucose excursions from nadir to peak blood glucose levels and vice versa, and has been used widely for assessing GB, but it takes into account glycemic peaks and nadirs occurring daily but does not account for the total number of fluctuation. It depends on sampling frequency, and manual or graphical estimation of means is subject to many source of error. So, and mean glucose or average glucose, it is overall measure of blood glucose over a period of time, offering a single high-level view of where glucose has been. A lower mean glucose often indicates fewer blood glucose sugars. However, it can also indicate a lot of low sugars or hypoglycemia are occurring. So cutoff level, the cutoff for diagnosing diabetes is A1C of 6.5% that correspond to a mean blood glucose of roughly 135 milligram per dl. So look for a mean blood glucose of less than 154 milligram per dl in adults with diabetes, which approximate to an A1C of less than 7%, the target A1C in 2000 ADA guidelines. In kids, the target is slightly higher and A1C less than 7.5%, which correspond to mean glucose value of 170 milligram. And some professional organizations also advocate for lower A1C levels in adults around 6.5%, that correspond to a mean glucose value of 135 milligram per dl. Now, second measure is standard deviation. Standard deviation or SD is a measure of long-term glucose variability. SD is highly correlated with most other measures of GB, including mean amplitude of glycemic excursions or MEAS. It measures variation around the mean glucose, means it measures intraday or intraday variations. And the goal is to keep the SD as lowest as possible, which would reflect a steady glucose level within minimal swings. Just like in someone without diabetes, SD of normal people without diabetes, based on data from Berlin and ESD, are found to be below 20 in all age group. Most people with diabetes would not have nearly that low an SD. So cutoff point of SD, aim for the SD of 1/3 of mean glucose. So SD is interpreted in context with the mean glucose. It means glucose is high, SD will be high. So disadvantages of SD, although SD is widely used, it has a limitation in that its use implies that glucose measures are normally distributed, which is typically not the case. It can miss certain peaks and nadirs occurring in between readings. And since SD is interpreted in the context with the mean glucose, so when mean glucose is high, SD will be high. So to counter all these problems, the concept of coefficient of variance came into the picture. So coefficient of variation has been proposed as the preferred measure of glycemic variability. GV-related research also utilizes CV as the preferred amplitude measure. Because all of the methods used for evaluating GV, including SD, are significantly influenced by the mean blood glucose, higher mean blood glucose levels are associated with higher GV value, unless they are corrected for the mean blood glucose. So coefficient variation, CV counters all these problems. So CV is a magnitude of variability relative to mean blood glucose. So percentage CV is calculated by calculated as standard deviation divided by mean blood glucose and multiplied by 100. For example, if standard deviation is 50, the average glucose is 150, then CV will be 33%. So what should be the normal cutoff point? CV of 33% or lower is considered a marker of stable blood glucose level. This means aiming for an SD that is less than 1/3 of the mean glucose. So percentage CV correlates well with risk of hypoglycemia. The relationship is not a direct proportionality. If percentage CV is less than 25%, then risk of glycemia is extremely low, almost negligible. But when percentage CV is more than 25%, there is nearly linear relationship between both theoretically and empirically. So next measurement is timing of glucose excursions with the increasing availability of CGM in recent years. Such time-related GV metrics have been more well known. Perhaps the most clinical important of all these metrics is the measure of time the patient spends within, above, or below the target range. Clinically, an assessment of time in targeted blood glucose range provide valuable information on the level of glycemic control and show different trends towards hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia, which is important information for therapy adjustment. It can help patient understand how hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia improves with the treatment over the time and can guide the urgency and degree of clinical response required. So in conclusion, there are multiple types of GV metrics. Despite the desire to standardize on a small number of metrics, it is more important to be aware of the available methods. And there are high correlation among many of these metrics. For example, MEAS and MOD are both are highly correlated with standard deviation and with other metrics. So thus one can just attention to only a few metrics without major loss of information. So for routine clinical practice, it is likely that standard deviation and corresponding coefficient of variance obtained using either SMBG or CGM will be sufficient to permit the assessment of changes in GV with time or following therapeutic intervention and to permit comparison with reference population. So for routine clinical use, a few graphs including AGP, a few statistics, for example, mean glucose, percentage coefficient of variance, or percentage hyperglycemia, percentage within range, and percentage hypoglycemia are usually sufficient to characterize GV. So there are different tools to measure glycemic variability, like HbA1c reflects the average glucose. It fails to identify the magnitude and frequency of intraday and interday glucose variation. SMBG provides a snapshot of the glucose value, does not detect fluctuation that might occur between each capillary glucose test. So CGM is a new frontier and it offers the opportunity to detect glucose variation, daily glucose fluctuation that can show how those numbers are affected by every activities and stress level, hypoglycemic events. The main benefit of CGM is observed in high-risk patients with frequent or severe hypoglycemia and those with impaired awareness of hypoglycemia and time in range. So how to minimize glycemic variability? Control of GV has been the focus of several interventional studies aimed at reducing this fluctuation. So lifestyle measures, diet and weight reduction are the first therapeutic instrument that can be used for reducing GV. Diet-induced weight loss can significantly improve insulin sensitivity, beta cell function, which is capable of reducing glucose level and delaying the progression from impaired glucose tolerance to diabetes. Replacement of dietary carbohydrate by protein and fat reduce all indices of glycemic variability by 36 to 45% when compared with a conventional diabetic diet. Anti-hyperglycemic agents, alpha-glucosidase inhibitors that target postprandial hyperglycemia, attenuate glycemic excursions and also reduce oxidative stress, and they have potential to improve endothelial dysfunction. And GLP-1 receptor agonists and DPP-4 inhibitors both have demonstrated a significant decrease in GV in people with type 2 diabetes in various studies. The benefits imparted by these agents could be explained by glucose.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Anuradha. You will have to conclude now.
Yeah, just concluding. It's stimulation of insulin secretion and concomitant suppression of glucagon, then SGLT2 inhibitors, and analog insulin, basal bolus therapy, continuous subcutaneous insulin, and bariatric surgery, and lastly, CGM monitoring all improve glycemic control. So this is the end of session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anuradha. You completed on time. So it was a very nice talk covering different aspects of glycemic variability, uh, starting from the bad effect of glycemic variability to its different methods of measurement, and then how to manage it. So it was a very nice talk. So any
Thank
questions?
you,
We
sir.
are still left with 2 minutes to ask any questions.
Yeah, I think excellent talk, Anuradha.
Thank
So
you, sir.
I was really enjoying your talk. So do you think this the standard deviation which you showed that is done by the 7-point SMBG? So what do you think for the in our day-to-day practice? Is it more important, or should we go for the Abbott's like this continuous glucose monitoring by Libre Pro, other things? So do you think that the a more practical approach will be a 7-point SMBG versus the CGM?
Yes, sir, I agree with you. 7-point SMBZ is more practical and feasible. People like to do it, and we can easily calculate standard deviation from this SMBG. So practically, I can favor SMBG. People favor it. CGM is not uh, in that much favor. But obviously with CGM device, we can calculate other things like time
Yeah,
in
like
range.
TIR and other things.
Point.
Yeah, time in range very important. Exactly.
Very,
Dr.
very
Birmani,
important. Yeah.
what is your opinion, Dr. Birmani?
CGM is the gold standard. You cannot replace it. But 7-point is the poor man's CGM. So you are getting good information, though it is not as good as the gold standard.
Yes, sir.
You might miss hypoglycemic episodes with 7-point SBGM, which will not miss with the CGM. But even the flash, 14 days one by I don't know which Abbott or something is also good, quite good.
So I think to
Because
reduce
of
the
the
glycemic
cost
variability, do you think that the recent introduction of the SGLT2 inhibitors or GLP-1 agonists, they are more important?
Yes, sir. We have
Let
found
me,
that they reduce glycemic variability.
that was an excellent talk, Anuradha. And
Thank you, sir.
just on a lighter note, a question for all the faculty and attendees. We all know that glycemic variability is bad thing. We all know that blood pressure variability is bad thing. But is there any variability that is good? Anybody?
We are locked up. This locked up is very, so movement is very important. So if this varies from locked up situation to the normal situation,
No,
that is
when
very,
we are
very
talking
good.
about parameters like glycemia, blood pressure, heart rate, and all that, do you think any variability is good? Well, yeah, I'll give you the answer. We'll not waste much time. Heart rate variability is a good thing. Absence of heart rate variability is a bad prognostic.
True, yes, yes.
So
Very
that one must
nice.
remember when we say that variability is a bad thing, it is for glycemic variability, it is for BP variability, but heart rate variability is one area where presence of heart rate variability is a good sign and absence is a poor prognostic sign.
So
Now,
how
I
to
think
keep,
we'll go to the
Dr.
next
Birmani,
speaker.
how to
Yeah.
keep this in the better way, how to maintain the heart rate variability
How to maintain the heart rate variability?
in a
I
very good
think,
shape? Yeah.
yeah. It's very difficult, how to maintain the heart rate variability. It requires a very good autonomic nervous system. That is the problem. There has to be a very delicate balance between the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. Now, we cannot do much about the parasympathetic system, but we can do something about overactivity of sympathetic system. We can either do meditation stress, we can do meditation pause stress, or we can use beta blockers. That will help in cutting down the sympathetic system and maintaining the heart rate variability.
So Dr. Hemsankar wants to know whether alcohol has any role.
Alcohol, see, alcohol, as said by Dr. Arvinda, has to be individualized. It depends from person to person. If Hemsankar Sharma takes even 15 ml, it is not good for him. is not good for him. But if I take 60 ml, it's good for me. So it depends from person to person.